Perek Chaf Tes Pasuk Beis is where we got to. Yud Beis, Pasuk Yud Beis, page 148. So we got to the point where Yakov speaks to Rachel, and just to keep everything in a proper perspective, when he sees the shepherds, and Yakov originally was worried that they're taking the flock in. So I saw one of the commentaries says that the reason that he got panicky was because he saw Rachel coming and he didn't want there to be a problem of yichud. Yichud is being alone with a girl who is not your mother, daughter, or wife. And so that just keeps that kiss that we're speaking about. Yes, it keeps it in proper perspective. That Yaakov Avinu was already worried about yichud. I don't know if I told you the story that went to court in the United States, the two people on the ski lift. Did I mention it? There was a guy asked me a question once, years ago. We were on the way to the yeshiva, and a guy asked me the following question. It's a documented incident. Guys here have looked it up. They went online, they looked it up. I don't know if it went to the Supreme Court in the United States, but it certainly went to a court in the United States. There was a couple that was engaged, a frum couple, probably, kind of modern frumadox, and they went out on a date. They went to a ski resort, and the chassan and the kala, they were on the ski resort. They're not married, and they went up on the ski lift, and the ski lift malfunctioned, so they were stuck dangling in midair, and they didn't know what to do. They started calling for help, but everybody in the resort had already gone home. So they realized at a certain point, Dave, you know this, Shaila? They had realized at a certain point that they had a problem, Shaila yichud. Yichud means if you're alone with a girl or a boy, whoever you are, whichever one you are, and you're not allowed to be alone, in not only behind a locked door, you can't be alone in any isolated area. Yaakov Avinu here is out in the field, it's all isolated, and if everybody leaves, he's going to be alone in the field with Rachel. That's also yichud. According to some, yichud is even if you're in a car with a girl at night and you're driving in a not lit up street. There could be a problem of yichud. So all these things are very, very, very dangerous. And so this couple was stuck on the ski lift. So the girl, the kala, decided that under the circumstances, she has to make the supreme sacrifice. So she jumped out of the ski lift and ended up breaking both her legs. Because you see, this is where it gets tricky, because that's what we were discussing, whether or not she or he is obligated to do so. The obvious question is, why did she jump and not him? That's the obvious question, and the answer to that I think, is that we don't know she jumped. She may have been pushed. But what we're discussing is, you see, anything that involves any of the three cardinal sins of Azar, Gilurais, and Shichus Damim, idol worship, immorality, and murder. It is not only the three cardinal sins themselves in the worst form. It is anything that any of their accoutrements. Any side issues that are connected to that, what are called in Lashon HaGoyim, called abizrayu. Abizrayu de'arayis. Abizrayu means anything remotely connected to them. So any physical contact with a member of the opposite gender, one would have to give up his life rather than transgress. There are even poskim who say that when a girl sticks out her hand, you're not even willing to shake her hand. You'd have to die rather than shake her hand or kill her. But you'd have to die rather than do it. Therefore, since yichud is in the prohibition in this area, that's it could very well be that you'd have to give up your life. I'm not saying you do, and I don't know if you do. I don't know if you have to jump off a ski lift, and it could be that men are more warned than women are. There are sources for that in the Talmud as well. So it's not clear if and what was done. All I know is the case went to court because they sued the ski resort. They sued the ski resort for the malfunction. The judge was not as sympathetic to the cause. The judge was not Jewish. His attitude was kind of, hey, listen, girl, you don't like your date. You don't want to jump. Just don't go out with him again. That was his attitude. So that's it's a documented case. It went to court in the United States. They lost the court case. They lost the lawsuit because they said, what are you jumping for? Who said you have to jump? So that's it. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't know what the halacha is. I only know there's certainly grounds for it. Whether or not you'd have to, I don't know. Reb David Povarsky, he was Rosh Shiva of the Panovich Yeshiva. So when he was a young man, once he was a bacher, he was on a train. He used to live in Russia or wherever they were, Russia, Lithuania, wherever. He was on a train, and he was in the train car, and there was a young lady, not Jewish, and she started talking to him, and he felt it's totally inappropriate. So he decided to go into a different train car. So he went to the door, but the door was locked. So he went to the other door. That door was locked too. So at that point, it turns into something. It's already gone beyond inappropriate to a problem of yichud. He felt there's a problem of yichud. They're alone on a train. So without a moment's hesitation, he just hurled himself out of the window of the speeding train. He was fine because he felt that under the circumstances you have to give up your life rather than transgress even the most minor problem. Let's say a guy would say to you, commit adultery with that woman or I'm going to kill you. What's the halacha?
Be killed.
Be killed. That we agree. You have to give up your life rather than commit adultery. 3 cardinal sins. Okay. So then it's only a question of, once we agree that there's a time you do have to give up your life, so then it's only a question of how far does that extend? Does that extend to a hug, a kiss, or a handshake? Where does it extend? It's only a question of what are the parameters. And the parameters may very well include, I don't say they do, that's why I'm being very careful here. I don't want anybody hurling themselves out the window. What happened? Right? Kaplan said that if a woman walks past the yeshiva, we got to hurl ourselves out the window. I'm just saying that we don't know what the parameters. I don't know exactly what the parameters are, but they may very well be that one would have to give up his life rather than transgress. It could very well be. It is very, very viable. Is it the halacha? I don't know. But, it's a very severe thing. The whole problem of yichud is a very, very severe thing. There's even a question of getting into an elevator with a woman. Did he get into an elevator? Now, Moshe Feinstein says you could. Moshe Feinstein says you could, but you will often find that when there's an elevator and the elevator is, I get in the elevator and I turn around and I see there's a lady who wants to get into the elevator, I usually say to her, it is permissible for you according to halacha. You're allowed to get into the elevator. If you're uncomfortable, I'll get out and you could get in. If you're bothered by it, because some women are just uncomfortable. Some people are uncomfortable, and there are certainly men who wouldn't do that. There are certainly men who would not get into an elevator with a woman. I have no problem with it. Moshe Feinstein says it's not. Moshe Feinstein says it's not a problem. You heard that Moshe Feinstein was asked, "What about somebody who rides a subway in New York in the morning, and it's crowded? And you're likely to bang into women." So Moshe Feinstein was asked about that. He said, "Look, since it's not your intent to bang into women, and you have no way of getting to work otherwise, that's not what you're there for, and so you're allowed to do it. If it's a guy who looks forward to his subway ride every morning, then you better not, good, a social time, then you better not, then you probably get a different job, do something else, become a Catholic priest. But don't get on the subway. But these are all problems that we got to deal with every day. You have problems walking between women. The Gemara says a man's not supposed to, not allowed. I don't know if it's a prohibition or if it's highly recommended, but a man is not allowed to walk between 2 women. You're not supposed to walk between 2 women. If a woman's not supposed to walk between 2 men. A man's not supposed to walk between 2 men. And now the definition, according to halacha, what constitutes walking between 2 women is if it looks like somebody looking at a woman's on one side of the street, woman's on the other side of the street, you're walking on the side, that doesn't look to anybody like you're walking between 2 women. But at the point that it looks like you're walking between 2 women, then you're not, according to halacha, you're not supposed to do that. So, these are things we take very seriously. So, people play for keeps. Plenty of Jews through history have given up their lives rather than worship idols. Plenty. No, I'm not talking to everybody. I'm saying Judaism could be very demanding sometimes. So so Yakov Avinu wanted to avoid it. Yeah, yes. Okay.
Adultery. Can a man commit adultery?
If it's a married woman. If it's a married woman. But what?
No.
If it's a married woman, no, it's still prohibited. It's still prohibited, and it's still prohibited. You're not allowed to be involved. It's not punishable by death in Beis Din if the girl is single. But you're still not allowed to. You're not allowed to consort with her, and you're not allowed to be over an yichud with her or anything else along those lines. She's got a lot of money, so marry her. But don't what do you call it?
Why say something like guy was on the train with the girl. Why can't he just separate himself to the far end of the train?
Because you're still in the same room. You're still in the same room.
You haven't been in New York subway.
Yeah. You're still.
Can you put up like a shirt or something?
No, it doesn't. You can't hold up a sign. Stay away.
Put up
a mechitza. They have to be a proper mechitza, according to, but not if you're in an enclosed room where you can just rip down the mechitza. No, in one way or another, that mechitza is going to come down. Yeah.
When you let yourself be, so what's the problem with yichud? Would that is there a possibility that you could be considered halachically married out of that?
No. The problem with yichud is that you will do things that are not halachic. To the contrary, that's the problem. The problem is that it takes two to tango, and they will if they're alone. And therefore, the Torah is very strict about it. It's interesting in Pirkei Avos says, "Tzchok v'kalus rosh," laughter and levity, margilin le'erva. They bring a person to the prohibition of immorality. There's laughter, levity, a drink, and that causes two people. So, commentaries say, you see, of all the prohibitions in the Torah, the only prohibition which really involves two people who are willing participants is immorality. Murder involves two participants, but usually one of them is not a willing partner. It's the only prohibition in the Torah. So the commentaries explain, why is it that the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says laughter and levity is a prelude to immorality? And the answer is because a human being knows inherently that there's something wrong with what he's about to do. Everybody knows immorality is wrong, even Noachites, even non-Jews. Everybody in the world knows immorality is wrong. There's a sense of shame that goes with immorality. Therefore, the only way you can get two people willing to commit such a grievous offense is if they take leave of their serious approach to life and they get into a state of laughter and levity. When you're in a state of laughter and levity, so that everything becomes a joke, remember we talked about late sonus, it turns into a joke, try to take things lightly and make light of it. That's the only way two consenting, certainly Torah observant Jews, will get involved in such a thing. It's the only place that the Torah says, it doesn't say anywhere you're not allowed to be alone in a room with a pepperoni pizza. It doesn't say anywhere in a room, Torah, you're not allowed to be alone in a room with a garment that's shatnez. Me and my shatnez. It doesn't say, they sing all sorts of songs. I fell into my shatnez. It doesn't. I wore my shatnez. It sounds like a country and western song. Or I had a dog named Shatnez. So it doesn't say that. There's no prohibition. But here there is, and we take all the precautions because that's where we are Moses. That's our Achilles heel. Okay, so Yakov comes to town. And Yakov tells Rivka that he could match his father. Now, Lavan says to him, page 150, top of the page, Vayomer lo Lavan, after finding out that Yakov is penniless because he lost his money and Lavan's disappointed, Ach atzmi u b'soriata, look, you're my flesh and bone, you're my relative, so I really got no choice but to host you, implication. If I had a choice, I wouldn't, because there's nothing in it for me. But, I have no choice. After all, we are related. Vayeshev imo chodesh yamim. Yaakov sits there for a month. Vayomer Lavan liYaakov. Lavan then says to Yaakov, Hachi ochi ata, are you my brother? Vavedetani chinam, and you're going to work for me. You're going to be a shepherd for me for no cost. Hagidali mama skurtecha. Tell me your price. How much do you want? So Lavan, Yaakov's there for a month, and Yaakov's tending the sheep in exchange for room and board. Immediately, the commentators say he got to work immediately. And he's tending for room and board. Lavan says, hey, listen, you're my relative. Are you going to, what's that got to do with it? Why does Lavan say to Yaakov, are you my brother and you're going to serve me for nothing? What do you mean, are you my brother? And you say, what does that mean? What does that mean? Why, to the contrary, he should say, are you going to serve me for nothing? What is added by the introduction is the fact that just because you're my relative, should you serve me for nothing? It sounds like Lavan is just oh so gracious. He's just oh so gracious. Well, you're my relative. Just because you're my relative doesn't mean you have to serve. Just name your price. How much you want for this work. All of a sudden, Lavan's Mr. Generous over what's going on.
It doesn't seem very generous.
Huh?
Generous.
See, right, he's certainly not. He's certainly a money-hungry schemer, so why is he all of a sudden turning to Yakov and saying, to the contrary, hey, listen, why rock the boat? The man's working for free. He's not saying anything. Why rock the boat over? Let him work. Take full advantage of it. Why are you rocking the boat? So the commentaries say, well, Lavan caught the hint from Yakov, because when Yakov came, Yakov said to Lavan, Yaakov comes in, and Lavan hears the name of Yakov, and he says to him over here, are you my brother? Meaning, you're just like me. My brother means that You're probably a swindler just like I am. You're going to sit here and work for free? Let's get the price out. We both know you're not going to do this for free and you're going to tag me. So before you do, let's get your price out in the oven. In other words, Lavan is not doing this out of the generosity of his heart. Lavan is doing this as a preemptive strike to avoid Yakov coming back later filing a lawsuit for past wages or whatever they did in those days. Lavan understands, listen, I know what I would do under the circumstances, and that's how people generally think. People generally think in terms of themselves. I had a guy, a lawyer. We have in our neighborhood, we have a charity organization. And there are no salaries, nobody makes any money. We just distribute the money. I have a lawyer who takes care of the account in the United States. He took care of our getting us a tax deductible number, and he runs the bank account in the United States. I finally met him. I never met him. It's somebody else that made the shidduch between us. And eventually he came to Israel. We sat down, and he wanted to see the records of the organization. So we're very, amateur about it, and I keep all the records handwritten in the notebook. I just write out where the money went to, and I showed him the notebook, and he said to me, okay, but where's all the money gone? So I said, here it's gone, and he kept coming, as a firm guy, he kept coming back to that question, where's all the money gone? And finally I picked up his drift, and I realized that the guy does not believe me that we're reporting all of the money. In other words, many charity organizations, they're kickbacks. A guy gives you $100, you give him $90, you get deducted off that, and everybody works out, and then he could take $100 off his taxes. You made $10. Everybody says, we don't do anything like that. We've never done that. We don't do that. And the guy kept coming back to that until I realized, and I kept saying to him, no, these are the records. This is what it's very, this is what we do. Till I realized, here's a lawyer from America. He's involved with many different people, not just Jewish and not just religious, and in his world, obviously, if there's cash flow, obviously somebody's taking something and somebody's whitewashing something. It's obvious. That's how it is in his world. He could not get past the fact that that's not happening over here. And I finally realized that that's where he's coming from. Because in his world, that's what you do, and therefore you project that on everybody else. Not that he himself is an honest man. But he's working and seeing people at their worst when it comes to money, and therefore the assumption is that you're doing the same thing, and he couldn't get past it, and it took me a while to realize that that's where he was coming from. So Lavan looks at Yakov and says, well, I know what I would do under the circumstances, so how much do you want? So Yakov says, Lavan, Torah says, Lavan shtei banos, Shema Gedola Leah, V'Shema Ktana Rachel. Lavan has two daughters. The older one is Leah, the younger one is Rachel. Ve'ene Leah Rakos. Leah's eyes were soft. V'Rachel Oisa Yifas Torah Yifas Nahar. Rachel is very beautiful. Now there are commentaries that say there are two different approaches to Leah. The most famous approach is Rashi's approach, that Leah's eyes were soft. That means her eyes, what we would call, I guess, for lack of a better word, puffy. How did the article translate it?
No, tender.
Were tender, because she had cried so much because of the rumor mongers. The rumor mongers all said, look, Lavan has two daughters, and Rivka has two sons. The older one's for the older one, the younger one is for the younger one. And Leah was not happy about the idea that everybody's talking about her marrying Esav. She's going to marry Esav, and Rachel's going to marry Yakov. Everybody knew the difference between Esav and Yakov. So Leah cried her eyes out. Now, I want you to understand something. What does that mean, she cried her eyes out? What does it mean Leah cried her eyes out? Leah cried her eyes out because she was because there were rumors that she was destined to marry Esav. What does that mean? What does it mean she cried her eyes out? I'll tell you what it doesn't mean. Yeah, what were you going to say? You should go ahead.
Probably what it doesn't mean. She was sad?
That's what it doesn't mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, she obviously wasn't happy. But crying doesn't mean she sat in a corner and little Sally Saucer, sitting in the corner, crying her eyes out. That's not what happened. She was crying her eyes out and davening, which explains later why when she gets married, she has children right away. Remember we spoke about the concept of davening, that God draws the tzaddikim near and wants you to ask. So not coincidentally, Sarah didn't have children, Rivka didn't have children, and Rachel didn't have children. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to draw the prayer out of them before they have children. Whatever they accomplished in their tefillah to have children, Leah already accomplished it in her tefillah not to end up with Esav. And since Leah ended up with Esav, since Leah already davened, therefore she was given one. That's one of the reasons why she was given children right away. Hold for 1 second, Elias. That's one of the reasons she was given children right away. There's another approach here. One of the commentaries points out something interesting. I wouldn't say this is the plain meaning of the verse, but there is something, a sociological reality, which is a lesson that comes from this, which is Leah knows that it's not a shidduch. And Leah knows that nobody's going to go for that shidduch, and her father's not going to force her to marry Esav. Nobody she knows that in her heart of hearts. What's she really crying about? Because everybody's talking about it. You know what Leah's worried about? She's worried about succumbing to societal pressure. That means in life, sometimes if you hear people talk about something long enough, you start to believe it yourself. And Leah knows this is not a set, this is not a shidduch, this is not a match. But everybody's talking about it, and that's a very dangerous thing in life. When people talk about something or behave a certain way, we are very prone to being influenced. So one of the commentaries says, again, he's not saying it as the plain meaning of the text, but as a lesson, as a springboard to a lesson that we always have to be aware of. People are talking about things, people make a big deal out of things, and sometimes we ourselves could be drawn into it and our values could change simply because the societal pressure around us, that's what's going on. So that's why Leah is crying. Okay, so what does Yakov say? Vayehav Yakov is Rachel. Yakov favored Rachel. Vayomer e'evodcha sheva shanim b'Rachel bitcha haktana. He says, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel bitcha haketana. Okay, now this has become an expression that's used in the vernacular when a person wants to say, I will tell it to him clearly, which leaves no room for margin of error. You say, I will tell him, Rachel bitcha aktana. In other words, why didn't Yakov say, I'll work for you for Rachel? Because he anticipates Lavan's going to come up with another Rachel 7 years from now. There's another girl down the block named Rachel. Bitcha, your daughter. So Lavan says, well, I got daughters from other wives, and maybe some they're called Rachel also. Haktana, the younger one. Rachel bitcha haktana. Let's get it clear. That's the one I'm working for. Because he anticipates the scheme. He anticipates the switch, and Lavan still manages to pull it over. Lavan still so that expression, whenever you're going to tell something bluntly and clearly. I have an employee. I'm not happy with the way he's working, and I'm going to make it very clear what I expect from him, otherwise he's out. That way of talking is called, I am going to tell him, Rachel bitcha haktana. I'm going to leave no room for imagination whatsoever. Yakov tries to do that. He tries to preempt, and Lavan is such a good swindler, he manages to pull a swindle on him anyway. Okay, now, one of the most puzzling psukim in the Torah. Look at this. Lavan says, well, I'd rather give her to you than anybody else, and then take a look at Pasuk Chaf. Vayavod Yakov b'Rachel sheva shanim. Yaakov works for Rachel for 7 years. Vayu be'enav kiyomim achodim. They were like just a few days be'ahavasa osa, out of his love for her. He saw it as only a few days. What's the obvious question? What's the obvious question?
It's going to feel like a few days.
Why?
He worked for 7 years.
Right. Well, let's strengthen the question a little bit. You're right. Why should it not seem like a few days? Isn't it true, anything in life, you're in a classroom,
It's hard work.
and I tell you, you're better than a classroom. You're 3 weeks from the end of the school year when you're a junior in high school.
It seems like it takes
Longest 3 weeks takes forever. When you're looking forward to something, it takes forever. When you have 2 days to study for your biggest test, time flies. When you need the time, time flies. You'd rather not, the time didn't go so fast. And when you have something that you really want to do, if I tell you in 3 days we're going to the amusement park, you know, when you're a little kid, those 3 days are absolutely forever. It's absolutely forever. So over here you got something very puzzling. Yakov loves Rachel, wants to marry her. He himself chooses 7 years. Lavan says, how long do you what do you want? Rachel says, I'll work 7 years for Rachel. And then it passes like this. It was only a so short amount, just passed just like that. It seemed like nothing. To the contrary, it just seemed like forever. It seemed like absolutely forever when a person wants something. You want a shear to end. 10 minutes of a shear to end, it could take forever. You know, I can't wait to get out of here, right? So the answer is like this. There are several answers. Anybody got an attempt? Anybody like to make an attempt?
They say time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, he certainly wasn't having. How is he having fun? That's exactly the question.
No, you're besimcha. I mean, he's besimcha. Even if you're looking forward to it and you're happy about it, it'll still go by.
Very good. One of the commentaries, the Chassam Sofer. I didn't understand exactly what it means, but that was my conclusion. Chassam Sofer says sometimes you have people in life, they because they want to get something, they're just eager for it to happen. The best way to have something pass is to do what you're doing right now properly and don't think about it. If you ever want Yom Kippur, the worst thing you can do on Yom Kippur is keep looking at the clock. Clock day never ends. Day just never ends. And if you start davening and get yourself into the davening as difficult as it is, next thing you know, you look up, another half hour passed, another 45-minute passed. Just do what you're doing. You're going to get there eventually. You're on a plane. You can't wait for the flight to end. Just get involved in something productive. You know, what do you call it? Learn, read, do something, and they'll make the time. If all you're thinking about is the time passing, Yaakov Avinu is such a conscientious worker. This is my job right now. He does his job properly. And we'll see later on in the end of the parsha, he tells Love, and I worked in the cold, and I worked in the hot, I worked night, and I worked day. But he's doing his job properly. Then time goes faster. That's only a secondary explanation. The main explanation, there are two main explanations. Explanation number one is 7 years for Rachel is a bargain price. Yakov sees it as a bargain. When it's a bargain, nothing. That was a joke. Got 7 years and I got a Rachel. That's a joke. It's like when you pay money. I remember I had laser surgery. Before I had my glasses, I had glasses. So then I had laser surgery. Even then I'm on film, so I can't say, but I was pretty good looking even then. But I had the laser surgery, and then people started telling me, wow, you do look like Tom Brady, all the time. I hear that all the time. People say to me, are you related to Tom Brady? So, Yisha, I don't like that laugh. Tom Brady, okay? Before I had the laser surgery, so they have the laser surgery. So it cost me $3,000. The first time in my life I've ever seen surgery, you get a discount on surgery. They were advertising it. It's $1,600 an eye, $3,000 if you do both. It's like a 2 for 1. It's like we're selling tomatoes over here. Get a kilo, second kilo free. You're talking about laser surgery. So laser surgery cost me $3,000. Somebody once said to me, how much was it? So I said $3,000. There's $3,000. He goes, that's pretty expensive, isn't it? I said, you're buying an eye. 3,000 is expense is relative. If I sell you, wow, I spent $20,000 on a car. Ooh, that's a lot of money. Well, it's a brand new latest model Mercedes. That's all of a sudden doesn't look so like, oh wow, that's a pretty good deal. 7 years. 7 years is a long time. Depends what the 7 years is for. If it's 7 years in the intro program at Or Sameach, that's a long time. Right? If it's 7 years for a Rachel, it's a bargain price. That passes quickly. Number one. Number two, the commentary says like this. Remember the example I gave you about studying for a test? You're studying for a test, you need time. Also, next thing you know, I can't believe the test tomorrow. I'm so not prepared. Yaakov Avinu is about to step into a new stage. He's about to step into the stage of bringing about the tribes, the Shvatim, what's called Shivtei Ka, the tribes of Hashem. Yaakov wants to make sure he's at the proper spiritual level in order to begin that aspect of his life. He needs 7 years to prepare himself for that. And when you're preparing for something that important, like you're studying for a test, then the 7 years fly by. My goodness, I don't know if I'm ready yet. Because the 7 years fly by because you're about to do something holy, you're about to bring in the holiest neshamas in history. So then you need to be spiritually prepared. Number three, Rav Perlman told me, I think it was Rav Perlman that told me, Yaakov's going to marry Rachel. Now at this point, Rachel is going to be the mother of the Jewish people. He doesn't know that there's going to be a swindle at this point. Rachel is going to be the mother of the Jewish people. The mother of the Jewish people has been living with a father like Lavan. And she's been raised in an environment where swindling, cheating, conniving, and scheming is all perfectly okay. Yakov is the Ish Emes. Yakov is the man of truth. Yakov feels, look, Rachel's the right one. Yakov knows prophetically that Rachel's the right one. But she does need some sort of apprenticeship. Rachel has to see me working for 7 years. 7 is always the unit of completion in Judaism. A week is 7 days. A person sits Shiva for a week, 7 days. A celebration, a Sheva Brachas is 7 days of celebration. Yontif is 7 days. Everything in Judaism, 7 is considered a complete unit. She needs a unit of time to be able to apprentice, to watch me and see that whatever she's learned for her father, that's not the way it has to be. Watch a Yaakov Avinu for 7 years. Watch her. This is what the mother of Klal Yisrael has to be. And therefore Yaakov names a price of 7 years, and it goes fast because there's a purpose to what he's doing. What he's doing is for a purpose, and therefore it's considered as if it was a short time. Okay? Now, okay, it's a very deep idea. I'm not going to go into it right now, but let's just go on for a second. Do you remember, maybe we'll touch on it. Do you remember that we said about the idea of why when Lot was with his daughters and Moab comes from there and Mashiach comes from there? Do you remember what we said about that?
You gave 2 reasons, right?
What were 2 reasons?
I remember the first one.
Go ahead.
The Kaplan one,
The souls. You got to disguise the souls.
Yeah.
You got to remember we spoke about that Moab Mashiach has to come from what looks like dubious relationships.
the evil forces.
Yeah, right. The evil forces, because the evil forces want to object to the soul of Mashiach. So we got to hide the messianic line so that those. Remember we spoke about that concept. So take a look. Yaakov Avinu over here in Pasuk 21. Vayomer Yakov el Lavan. Yaakov says to Lavan, Hava es ishti, give me my wife. Ki malu yamai, for the dime is up. Ve'avo eleha, and I will cohabit with her. Right? This is Yakov talking to his future father-in-law. Right? You know, what's wrong, Dave? Fairly.
Well, it's a little bit
A little crude,
Yeah.
a little indiscreet. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says it's the left column of Rashi. Rashi says Malu Yamai. 4 lines from the bottom, right in the middle of the Rashi. Well, let's read the whole Rashi. Malu Yamai, my days are up. She'amr imi, that my mother said, go away for a short period of time. And it's been 7 years, and now in those days 7 years wasn't considered a terribly long time. Ve'od malu yamai, second column, it's the second left column, 5 lines from the bottom. Ve'od malu yamai, shariani ben peidalad shana, I'm 84 years old. Ve'emasai amid yud beishalatim, when am I going to be able to produce the 12 tribes? Ve'zeu she'amar ve'ovo aleha, and that's why he used an expression that I may cohabit. The most lowest of the low, the crudest of the crude doesn't talk that way. You know, guy doesn't walk up to his father-in-law and talk that way. Elolaholi told us Amakach. He said it because he had to bring in the tribes into the world. So the same commentary, the Alshich, who mentions that about Mashiach, he explains why did Yakov talk this way? Why is Yakov being so crude? Why is Yakov doing that? The answer is he's got to bring in 12 very lofty neshamas. What's the danger? The same Kabbalistic concept, that the forces, the spiritual forces of evil, will object to those neshamas coming into this world. So what does Yakov have to do? He makes himself look like he's just the crudest of the crude. And then when those forces see it, they say, well, what holiness could come from a guy like this? And therefore, it's all a camouflage. It's just a way of disguising who Yaakov is so that the neshamas can be brought into the world. That's what I say. Okay. To be continued, gents.